Hi, and welcome to Global Beehive Meet Experts. Today we have the absolute pleasure of having Jan Guliksen here with us from KTH. You are one of the most distinguished experts when it comes to digitalization here in Sweden, and we're very happy to have you on board here. Will you say a couple of words about yourself?
I can do that. Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to participate in your show in that sense. I'm Jan Guliksen, as you said. I'm a professor in human-computer interaction, which means I'm both an engineer or computer scientist and working with psychology, mixed in design to try to work with these things. And I've been working with usability and accessibility of computing systems, and more recently also been working quite a bit with digitalization and what that means. And I've had the pleasure for the last 8 years also to work closely to the Swedish government, heading the Digital Commission of Sweden, and now working in the Digitalization Council for the Minister of Digitalization, and which I also actually have done from a European context, the European Commission. So I think I have a broad sense of what digitalization means, both from a research point of view and education point of view, but also on a policy point of view in this.
You've been very active in the domain of digitalization for so many years. How did this interest start?
Well, it actually started when I did my PhD many years ago, where I got a project on working with what we now call the digitalization of the Swedish National Tax Board. I actually spent 10 years in collaborations with the tax board on how to sort of lead the process of digitalizing their businesses. In the late 90s, when I got in first, it was a lot about computerization, meaning that you put new tools into your business, but don't think that it actually changes the way you do things that much. Until now that we talk about digitalization, which is a completely change of the way that we do these things. So that has taken me into that. I've also shown quite a bit of interest into the workers' situation. I mean, many people look upon the digitalization of the tax board from the citizen perspective, how you can make a much easier income tax declaration or so forth. But my interest was actually in what way this influenced the people working there, and what did their digital work environments look like, and could we work to improve their digital work environments and their digital skills to be able to manage this in the best possible way.
Sounds really interesting. We can come back to that a little bit. When I look at some of the presentation you have made, you tend to go into the societal digitalization, that it has a broader perspective than just only technology.
Yeah, I think it's important to actually rest a little bit in the definition of what we mean with digitalization, because you tend to use the words quite differently in different parts of the world. I mean, in English, you actually distinguish between digitization and digitalization. Where digitization could be, for example, if we have a business that deals with a lot of forms, we make these forms available online as a PDF, but we need to print this PDF, fill it out by hand, then scan it and put it back in, which is sort of the old-fashioned digitization way of doing things. We haven't really changed the way we do things, but we sort of make the form available online. Now, I would very much like to look at the societal digitalization, which is then actually changing the complete business model behind how you do things. So for example, if you look at Uber's way of digitally transforming the business that they have by making taxi driving possible for every citizen to actually engage in both driving and being a part of that, which the digital tools give you this opportunity of doing that. And you can think about this in every possible application area, that you can do these tremendous complete changes of how you do things due to what you can do with digital technology, and sometimes actually also do completely new things that you weren't able to do before. So that's the important part of this, to understand that digitalization is not that much about technology. It's equally much about changing your business, changing your organization, changing your skills to be able to compete in the new business that we have for the future.
Yeah, because what we can see is that not many organizational companies want to change by themselves. It's often an external force that is forcing them to change, for example, their business model and so on. So it's very important to understand, the social dimensions or the social context in which these companies live and thrive, and understand the unpredictability that is happening in these social clusters or social contexts as well.
Yeah, and particularly I've always had a large interest in what we call user-centered design, to actually start with the needs of the users and maybe not necessarily their wishes, because sometimes we need to interpret their wishes into what they actually need in that sense, but have the needs of the users be in focus throughout the development. And that's when I think we can create really great technology for the future.
How do you see that COVID-19 has affected companies? Because that is a very, like a social disruption.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it is a fascinating process now. I think that I can take my own business as an example, the university business, because when the pandemic actually started to influence the society, we got a late decision a Thursday night saying that starting from Monday morning, everything should go digital. You should continue to do all the teaching you did before, but you need to move into a digital fora to do that. And we actually managed to do that. We locked the campus completely and everybody moved into this. And with a lot of efforts from the very dedicated staff that really made great work to move this into, it actually happened in a way that was beyond predictability. And actually some colleagues who said that if they knew that this was what it took to digitalize higher education, they would have started a pandemic a long time ago, which is of course nothing you should joke about, but actually we moved like 5 or 10 years in the future just over this weekend when we did that, which was fascinating. Yeah, from a personal point of view, I could also see a fascinating thing, because I started working from home on the 15th of March. And I tend to divide my working time into 3 different categories. The first category were meetings that immediately moved into a digital format, like Zoom or Skype or something like that. Interestingly enough, many of these meetings then became shorter. So when I had board meetings, for example, that usually was day-long meetings, when you did them in Zoom, then they were all of a sudden they were only 3 hours long. So you gained a lot of time on that. The second category were meeting that was postponed to the fall because they thought that it was so important to meet physically. So we need to have the meeting, but we push it until later. And the third category were meetings that were just canceled, which is quite fascinating, because then you start questioning yourself, well, if the meeting was more important than that, so you just cancel it, why did we at all have these meetings? And then in addition, when when I spent quite a bit of time commuting and traveling internationally, I gained a lot of time. So with the pandemic, I could see a tremendous increase in efficiency. I could all of a sudden produce more scientific papers, write more application for grants than I'd done before. So there was a tremendous productivity increase in what we're doing. The interesting thing, I think, is now that we're sort of starting to talk about going back to what it was before. I tend to argue that there isn't any going back. It's impossible for us to even consider going back, even if there's many members of the organization that is longing back. So right now, for example, at my university, we are doing everything hybrid. We're both supporting the digital environment and supporting the physical premises to be able to cope with that. And when we transformed from physical into digital, we could take a lot of the staff that supported the physical premises to support the digital so that we could get that to happen quickly. But now that we're moving into a hybrid situation, we still need as much support as before on the digital platforms, but also we need the support on the physical platform. So it takes a lot more effort for the organization to actually support this. And I'm sometimes wondering if it's the best use of our resources to have this hybrid. Maybe we should actually start thinking about the digital as the new normal. And use that as the starting point for all the things that we have to do. I'm not saying that physical meetings shouldn't happen, but they should happen for the right things at the right frequency. And I think that many times we've learned that the digital meeting can be just as powerful and exciting and personal as the physical meetings can be, even if you're not in the same room breathing in the same air.
There are many companies and organizations that had very strict corporate policies about being present at the office and not allowing for remote work. That's now being challenged. And that means that the leadership and management will have to change somehow about how they manage their people. Is this something that you see also in your research and your experience?
Yes, I see that it takes quite a bit of brave leadership to run an organization in this situation that you have now. You don't want to put on your conscience to force somebody to go to work if they're infected by the pandemic, for example. So therefore, you need to be very cautious on what you're doing. But still, you also need to have a leadership that is embraced with a lot of trust, because you really need to be convinced that your staff is really committed to delivering in the same frequency and with the same quality and efficiency as before, even though they may be working from home at time to time. So that takes quite a bit of leadership. And we've seen all sorts of strange things happening, like effects that it may have had on your psychosocial working conditions. For example, people, the rate of depressions or the rate of drug abuse or things like that. There's tendencies that these things are increasing. This also, of course, then puts lots of challenges on leadership to see and act upon this, even if the people that you're in charge of are not in the same room where you are. So therefore, there's a need for a new digital leadership, I would claim, in that.
But I guess that change for leaders and managers to more or less accept and adopt to this new normal would require quite a bit of training and education to understand the full grasp of it, to grasp it fully.
Yeah.
Well, what do you see your role from the university in that matter? I mean,
Well, yeah, very good question indeed. I think that in the future, education will play out quite differently from what it does today, because today universities play a major role in people's life between 20 and 25 years of age, because that's when people go to the university to educate themselves. So then hopefully they graduate with a degree, hoping never to have to come back to the university. Well, that was in the past, I would say. In the future, there's much more needs for reskilling and retraining and gathering new insights and new things that you need to learn to be able to cope with your job. So I foresee a future where we're all forced to spend like 10 to 20% of our working time educating ourselves to meet these future goals. And how can you do that? Well, of course, university education in many countries are for free. So maybe you could sort of attend those things. But then again, the universities also need to realize that we need to change the way of teaching and particularly assessing people's skills so that we could automatize that in a much higher degree. So that it becomes feasible to actually run these lifelong learning courses and make people in the industry come back and take new courses and learn new things, because that's really when you develop as a person. So we need a new kind of higher education that is digital first, and that is equally valid for lifelong learning as it is for our students of today.
Is it
How we
also
make
the fact,
those.
is it also the fact, I mean, most of the leaders also need a new mindset and attitude towards what digital is. Not only the theories, but also maybe mindset change.
Yes, definitely, and we do see that many people's approach to using digital tools now, as they just go beyond the initial hesitation to using it, and see that this is actually a benefit to me in my work and my private life. And if I only start learning how to use it, I can dig into and understand more and more and teach myself new ways of doing things. So the mindset needs to be open, and you need to have a mindset where you dare to try different things and dare to explore this. And this was particularly amazing with COVID-19, I would say, because what happened was that many people thought that digital meetings was just not good enough. They were unsure of how to use it. They were forced to learn quite quickly on this. And it turned out it wasn't so difficult to use it. They actually learned to master the digital meeting tools and all the different parts of it quite well to do this. And I think that if you only allow yourself into and be a newcomer into these systems and start learning by using these systems and start asking questions on how you use it and continue to develop your skills on this, you will have a much better digital experience in the future.
Yeah.
How will you make these educational digital experiences more engaging? Because one of the problems that we've seen, are you familiar with MOOCs? Of course,
yeah.
You know, and the promise of MOOCs 10 years ago, it was going to revolutionize education. It hasn't happened, mainly because they haven't been able to engage learners to the degree in which they get engaged when they go to a classroom. So,
yeah. No, so for sure, I mean, the biggest development in digital education is not technical. It's a pedagogical transformation. You need to teach in a different fashion. You can only sort of film your 1-hour lectures and put them online and expect the students to engage with that. You need to work with completely different ways of doing this. I've experimented personally with this for quite some time, and I've seen some very interesting effects of it, because what happens is that when my lectures are put online and others are allowed to see it, for example, I've seen students that get back to me and say that, well, you speak so slowly, so I actually watch you in double speed, and therefore I can take the course in half the time that is required to do this. And you find things such as this happening. Not to mention one of the research subjects that I work extensively with, which is people with cognitive disabilities, that have found this filmed lectures be of enormous quality for them, because they can watch short intervals of the film over and over again until they really understand what it is about. They can get automatic subtitles to explain what is happening. And I actually also had one of my students who translated my lecture into Arabic and watched that with her entire family every Friday afternoon. So students are really into here in how they use these things. In itself, the problem with it is that it's mainly the commercial platform to be able to sort of package the digital learning and teaching. But now that universities work more with trying to transform and develop this, they will have completely different mechanisms of working with that, in which you mix short lectures with also assessments that are with the purpose of that you should learn while you're doing the assessment and not only as a summative thing. And also we're working quite a bit with peer evaluation. So the students help coach each other in what they're doing. So there's many completely new ways of learning online that are very engaging, and where you work with more the practical work of learning to use this, which I think is the way to view things in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. We are coming a little bit to the end of this interview, and we're very happy to have you on board here and sharing your knowledge. One final question: if you would give some advice to digital professionals about how to thrive in this market, what would you tell them? Do you have any sort of
digital professionals, or all professionals in digital tools, you mean?
Yes, something, or executives that are embarking on this digital transformation. What should they think about?
Yes, I mean, it's different advice to different people, but I think that everybody should be aware that their needs of educating themselves in the future will grow. So they will need to learn new things as they go on in the courses that they do. As executives, I think it's extremely important that you embrace and positively engage with the digital tools, so that you make your organization be innovative and try out new things and work with them in the best possible manner. And you also need to be aware that you need to be supporting people's education of themselves within their working time, because people can't have time to do that just on their free will in that sense. And universities, then, we need to change the way that we're doing and delivering things to meet these needs for lifelong learning in the future. So it's a complex system of different players that all need to alter and change and transform this together to meet this. And for that to happen, it takes really engaged digital leaders.
Thank you so much for that insight. Very, very valuable for all of us.
Thank you for having me.
And I thank you so much for participating in this interview. And I hope that we can learn more about your research and your insights going forward.
For sure. And please feel free to get in touch if you have any questions or want to follow up or debate anything online. I'm always there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating. And next week we will probably have a new interesting interview. So stay tuned.